continue inshallah ta'ala with the book of Kitab al-Tawheed and chapter 4, Al-Khawf min al-Shirk, fear of shirk. Bab al-Khawfi min al-Shirk, the fear of shirk. And again, with the previous chapters, we might not have given these chapters its rights with explanation, but this is actually something that the ulama they mention. Sometimes the book is explained briefly, and then some other times the book is explained in details. So it doesn't mean that if a person attends or listens to the explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed in brief, that means he's done with it. No, it's one of the books that you finish it and you start it again. You finish it and you start it again. And each time you start it, you start with another level. That's why even the shuruh or the explanations of the ulama are different levels. Some shuruh, some explanations are very precise and very short, and some explanations are more in details. One of the best explanations to the book, something like Fath al-Majid, has so many benefits in it. And if you go into the details of the explanations of it, there are so much Allah benefits. So it's one of the books in the masajid that you finish it, you start it over again and so on. But this is just meant for it to be, briefly, we do the best we can to derive from the sayings of the ulama, of course, the benefits that are being mentioned. And I'm also using one of these explanations by Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan, Hafidhullah Azza wa Jal, very precise explanation to the book of Kitab al-Tawheed, especially when it comes to the benefits. This chapter, Al-Khawf min al-Shirk, the fear of shirk. It comes into that order after mentioning the obligations of the Tawheed and the virtues of the Tawheed, and how to establish the Tawheed, how to purify the Tawheed. Then now it's time to talk about the fear that should be present in the heart of the Muslim, out of the fear that a person might, the Tawheed might be taken away from him. The fear of shirk. It's an act of worship that a Muslim should have, because as we would see in the verses of the Quran. The first ayah, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. Verily Allah forgives not that partners should be set up with Him in worship, but He forgives except that anything else to whom He pleases. This verse by itself, when we recite it, it should bring in the fear in the heart that a person should have the fear of falling into the shirk. How that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forgive matters of shirk if a person dies in the state of shirk, and everything else is being forgiven by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills for it to be forgiven. The second ayah, Ibrahim alayhi salam said, وَجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ, which means, and keep me and my sons away from worshipping idols. Who's the one that is saying this? Ibrahim alayhi salam. And we know the status of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And he is Hanif, and as we mentioned in the verses before, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised them, and so on. And he himself alayhi salam would say this, وَجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ, making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and keep me and my sons away from worshipping idols. And as Ibrahim al-Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said, who can guarantee to be safe from shirk after Ibrahim alayhi salam? If Ibrahim alayhi salam himself is saying this, who can then come after Ibrahim alayhi salam and says, why should we fear falling into the shirk? That means we are more likely that we should have this fear in ourselves, and this is something that even the Prophet ﷺ said that he fears for his ummah, as it will come inshallah ta'ala. وَجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ. The first verse, it shows the major shirk that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade is the worst sin, and that the Muslim should be afraid of that, and also from the minor shirk. And the second verse, as we heard, the dua, to have the fear that is present in the heart that a Muslim is afraid to fall into the shirk. Again, it shows that what is the worst sin that can ever be committed is shirk. And that anything else other than shirk, if a person dies in a state of a sin, either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would forgive him, or he will enter the hellfire and then he will be forgiven. And that the fear of shirk is the way of the messengers, and it also should be the followers of the messengers. He's the one alayhi salam that broke the idols with his own hand, right? And idol worshipping, sometimes do we think, or do we have this fear that we might fall into idol worshipping, something that is against even sound mind, right? But it proves that it's not, the matter is not just about sound mind. It's about the person, his heart become corrupted as a result of sins, as a result of the heart attached to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person leaving himself like this, it can lead him to such a degrading way of seeing things. Otherwise you might find a person very smart, but he worship an idol, worship some bricks, right? How is that? This is the amazing creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, it makes the Muslim more having this fear, so it makes him more obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, more scared of his sins, so that he will steadfast till the moment of death comes in place. Also, it shows that he's making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for himself and for his son and for his offsprings, which is a good thing for also for a Muslim to do. Making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect one's iman and the faith of one's offsprings, which is a virtuous thing definitely to do. And it also negates the claim of some people. Some people actually say that. More than one person actually told me that. That they say that the shirk, it's never going to be established in this ummah. Some people believe that if you're a Muslim, there's no way that you can fall into shirk. You're a Muslim, how can you fall into a shirk? This is something that the verse states that, and the Prophet ﷺ said, أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ الشِّرْكُ الْأَصْغَرُ, which is the next hadith. And the Prophet ﷺ also mentioned in authentic hadith that لَن تَقُومَ السَّاعَةُ, that the hour would not be established till some of the women of the Khulasa, of the tribe of the Khulasa, they would go around one of the idols. So it's something that is happening. It can happen in this ummah, and it's happening, and it's a reality. People call into other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we have to be warned from that. The hadith, أَخْوَفُ مَا أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ الشِّرْكُ الْأَصْغَرُ فَسُئِلَ عَنْهُ فَقَالَ الرِّيَاءُ. The Prophet ﷺ said, what I fear most for you is a form of shirk. When asked about it, he said, الرِّيَاء, or showing off. And this hadith shows the danger of الرِّيَاء. The Prophet ﷺ is saying that what I fear most for you, for who? The Prophet ﷺ is addressing the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and those who follow them, those who are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, those who are on the Tawheed, that the Prophet ﷺ is afraid for them that they might fall into the riya, or showing off with their deeds to the human beings and not seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And this is the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ towards his ummah, and warning them and showing the things that he fears for them and so on. And it shows the fear of the minor shirk. Why? Because the riya, it's a minor shirk, and the Prophet ﷺ said that this is the most thing that he fears for his ummah. So the minor shirk is even worse than sins. And also it shows that the shirk is of two kinds, the major shirk and the minor shirk. The major shirk, any ibadah that is being done to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The minor shirk, anything that would lead to the major shirk, anything that has an attachment of the heart to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The major one makes the person in the hellfire forever, and the minor shirk is in the category of sins, but it's worse than major shirk. And riya, again, is to show off. The person seeking the witness of people to his deeds, which is opposite to al-ikhlas. Al-ikhlas is when a person seeks the witness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on his deeds alone. He seeks that. People witness one another when they make ibadah, but we do not seek that. We seek only the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should only seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on our deeds. And also it has some issues when it comes to the riya. The shaitan whispers, and the person should fight the whispers of the shaitan. We follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, and we strive with ourselves to make the deed sincere. Any person that would leave a deed out of the fear that this deed might be done for showing off, this is a wrong way. Why? Because he should do the deed if it's a virtuous deed, and have the patience and the striving to make it sincerely for the sake of Allah. And the deeds that are done to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, of course, matters of shirk. A person should do it sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ulama also mentioned, if the deed is done originally for the sake of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course it's rejected and the person is punished. If the deed originally is done for the sake of Allah and for the sake of others, he wants both, the deed is rejected and the person will be punished also. Why? Because the deed has to be purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the meaning of a hadith, أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاءَ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلًا أَشْرَكَ فِيهِ مَعِيَ غَيْرِي تَرَكْتُ وَشِرْكَ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I'm the most rich among the partners. If someone do a deed seeking the pleasure other than me, I would leave him and his deed and his partnership. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most rich. So if this is the case, then the deed is rejected and the person is subjected to the punishment of Allah. But if the deed originally is done for the sake of Allah, this is how it's supposed to be. And then while he is committing the deeds, while he is in the deed, the riya comes in place. Whether it's the whispers of shaitan or it's real. That he started the salah sincerely for the sake of Allah. Whether he's alone or among people, he would still pray. But then the shaitan comes and whispers, or someone enters and he wants to beautify his salah. What is the ruling in that case? If the whisper comes and he fights it away, then there is nothing, no harm on him whatsoever. If he takes this whisper and he builds an action as a result of that, make his salah longer and so on, the ulama had two opinions with regarding to this. Some said the deed is rejected. If he does not fight himself, he likes that. Like he started the salah sincerely for the sake of Allah, and then he started liking to beautify it for others, and he keep on with this. He did not hate it, try to feel bad about it, try to push it away from himself. No, he enjoyed that, so he kept going with it. So they said the deed is rejected. The other opinion says all this extra things that he's doing would be rejected, and what he normally would do would be accepted. So the matter, it's unseen, we do not really know exactly what would happen to such a person. That's why it's very dangerous to feel comfortable in such a behavior. It's definitely a disaster to feel comfortable. Once this feeling comes in, person should dislike it so much and work in himself to have the deed sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the deed to be done sincerely. And al-ikhlas definitely is something that is a condition for a deed to be accepted, and something that should be given so much attention. The Muslim never leaves intention. It is not a level in which a person would work on his intention for a few years and then after that he's fine. No. It's an act of worship that doesn't leave the Muslim. At all times he has to work on his intentions to make it only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next hadith, من مات, حديث ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من مات وهو يدعو من دون الله ندا دخل النار. Of course, the previous hadith, we see that this is the most thing that the Prophet ﷺ feared for his ummah. Comes under the title of the fear of shirk. So we have to have the same fear. That means it's a healthy fear. That makes the person steadfast on the deen of Allah. And also this hadith, whoever dies while ascribing partners to Allah enters the hellfire. Reported by Al-Bukhari. This is how dangerous it is. Dies while he's ascribing partners with Allah, it's not a matter of play, he will enter the hellfire. And hellfire and Jannah both are very close to each and every one of us. As the Prophet ﷺ said in the authentic hadith, الْجَنَّةُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَى أَحَدِكُمْ مِنْ شِرَاكِ نَعْلِ وَالنَّارُ مِثْلُ ذَلِكَ. That the Jannah is closer to one of you, more closer than his shoes to his skin. And the same thing the hellfire. Why? Because once a person dies, that's it. Either he will be among the people of Jannah or among the people of the hellfire. This is how dangerous and how serious the situation is. And this is how close the two opposites are, very close to each and every person. So that's why it means what? It means it's something not to be relaxed, not something to be belittled, and a person live a life of forgetfulness. No, a person should make sure that he is doing the deeds of the people of Jannah and constantly repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and purifying one's tawheed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. When the person's heart is truthful and he is acting like this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for the truthful slaves. So this is definitely a hadith that brings the fear in the heart. And here, مَنْ مَاتَ وَهُوَ يَدْعُو, the one that dies, they say ascribing partners to Allah, right? And it means calling unto other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which shows that the dua is an act of worship. And those who make dua to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling on a dead person or whatever, that it's something that is a major shirk. We can call one another. You can ask a person that is alive to do something for you if he's capable of doing that. It's not shirk, right? If you ask someone to help you to lift something, it's not shirk. But if you ask that person to forgive your sins, meaning in the hereafter, he's not capable of doing that, right? So that means it's shirk. So when a person goes to a dead person and asks him to lift something for him, that's shirk. Why? Because this dead person is not able to do that, or to ask him to forgive you, or to whatever there is. So again, anyone that calls to other than Allah means a prophet, a righteous people, an evil person, it doesn't matter. Because some people, when they think, well, this is the Prophet ﷺ, you don't love the Prophet ﷺ? Loving the Prophet ﷺ means the person follow the Prophet ﷺ. For people to call on to the Prophet ﷺ, that means they do not love the Prophet ﷺ because they're committing shirk. So what is love is defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is love? قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِ يُحْبِبُكُمُ اللَّهِ. If you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then follow me, meaning follow the Prophet ﷺ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would love you. This is how a person is a slave. He does not judge his own desires. He's a slave of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell him to do something, so he does not transgress the limits even in matters of love. So this hadith brings this fear, and that the shirk is not to be forgiven unless the person repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hadith al-akhir in the chapter, the last hadith in the chapter, reported by Imam Muslim, hadith Jabir radiallahu anhu, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من لقي الله وهو لا يشرك به شيئا دخل الجنة ومن لقيه يشرك به شيئا دخل النار. How direct the matter is, whoever meets Allah on the day of judgment, not having associated anyone with him in worship, shall enter Jannah. And whoever meets him having committed shirk in any way, he will enter the hellfire. This is how the matter should be very clear. That means the Muslim should choose to be among the first group to worship none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And again, this is in the light of what have been mentioned before. That means if a person died in the state of the Tawheed, but he still have sins, he would eventually enter Jannah. Or he would enter Jannah from the first instant. But if he dies in the state of complete Tawheed, he would enter Jannah from the first instant. Is this issue clear? The issue of the complete Tawheed and the weakness in the Tawheed. So definitely that should bring the fear in the heart that a person might lose the Tawheed. Because there's no salvation for the person unless he has the Tawheed and is away from shirk. And the matter is not, also we learn from this, as the ulama they say, it's not just by how much actions a person do, but what really matters is to be away from shirk. You find some people of innovations of the deen and everything, they do so much deed. Even the Prophet ﷺ, when he said about the Khawarij, if you look to their salah, you will belittle your salah and your ibadah. Their knees is like the knees of a goat. How rough it is out of their sujood and ibadah. Doing so much deed, but it's all in vain. Definitely doing a lot of deed and a lot of ibadah is good, according to the way of the Prophet ﷺ. But some people concentrate on doing many deeds without concentrating of purifying their hearts from shirk and their deeds from riyā and things of that nature. So this is what the real important work should be done, in which the person fulfill the tawheed and stay away from shirk, and that is the person that would benefit from his ibadah and his striving to the matters of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that the meaning of La ilaha illallah is to be established when a person is away from shirk and worship none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, as we mentioned, we learn from this how close it is, the Jannah and the hellfire, to the person. That means the person should be on his guard to do that, and the virtues of someone to stay away from shirk. So this is the fear of shirk. And again, from the evidences we saw. Verse, hadith. And that's definitely the benefit of getting the revelation. قُلْ إِنَّمَا أُنذِرُكُمْ بِالْوَحْيِ. You would never find a better way of warning or giving glad tidings other than the verses of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the Prophet ﷺ said, I am warning you by the revelation of Allah. And that's even something for us to work on to use. You advising someone, you're giving a khutbah or whatever there is. Some people give khutab or durus, talking all kinds of words and things of that nature. You know, we should use the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and the sayings of the companions radiallahu anhum. The revelation is the most effective way of trying to advise anyone or to talk to someone or whatever there is. Why? Because it's revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.